Hey everyone, I am Mary Joy Amasin. Today I am going to discuss the models of sign. So humans are naturally driven to create. We are homo significans or meaning makers. We do this through signs, which can be words, image, sounds, or object. However, these things only become sign when we assign meaning to them. So Peirce states, nothing is a sign unless it is interpreted as a sign. We interpret sign based on a familiar convention, often unconsciously. This process is the core of semiotics. So semiotics is the study of sign and meaning. So two major theories in these fields are Ferdinand de Saussure and Charles Sanders Peirce, whose models of signs will be explored. First, let us all discuss the Saussurean model, dyadic model of signs. So, Saussurean model, Saussure's model of sign is in the dyadic tradition. So, Prior advocates of dyadic models in which the two part of a sign consist of a sign vehicle and its meaning, included Augustine 397, Albert Magnus, and the scholastic 13th century. So Saussure defined as a being composed of a signifier or signifiant and a signified or signify. Contemporary commentators tend to describe the signifier as the form that the sign takes and the signified as the concept to which it refers. So Saussure makes the distinction in these terms. A linguistic sign is not a link between a thing and a name, but between a concept, which is the signified, and a sound pattern, which is the signifier. So the sound pattern is not actually a sound, for a sound is something physical. So a sound pattern is in the hearer's psychological impression of the sound, as given to him by the evidence of his senses. So this sound pattern may be called material element, only in that is the representation of our sensory impression. So the sound pattern may thus be distinguished from the other element associated with it in a linguistic sign. So these other elements generally of a more abstract kind, so the concept. So if you're going to explain that one, Saussure explained that linguistic sign does not connect a word to an object, but rather a concept, which is signified, to a sound pattern, which is signifier. So signifier is not a physical sound, but the mental impression of the sound in the mind of listener. So the sound pattern is only immaterial in the sense that it is based on sensory perception or how we hear it. So signified is the abstract concept associated with signifier, not the physical thing itself. So this means that language is psychological. We do not directly name object, but instead associate mental perception with words. So that's the Saussure models, the Saussurean model, which is the dyadic model of sign. So let's continue the Saussurean models. Two sides of a page. Saussure compared the signifier, sound pattern, and signified or concept to two sides of a page, meaning they are inseparable. One cannot exist without the other. So, in spoken language, a word must have both sound and meaning, and also one consists alone. So, there are intimately linked in the mind. When we hear a word, it automatically triggers the associated concept and vice versa. However, while Saussure saw the signifier and signified to distinction but inter-independent, later, but Later, in post-structuralist theories, criticize this clear separation. They argue that meaning is unstoppable. The connection between signifier and signified is not fixed. The other one is the signifier dominates. Some theorists reversed Saussure model, claiming that words shape meaning rather than meaning shaping words. This challenge or this challenges the traditional idea that concept, which is signified, exists first, words signifier simply name them. Next is the relational system. Saussure argued that signs only make sense as a part of a structured system, not because they inherently refers to object. Meaning is based on relationship between signs, not a direct connection to reality. Number one, signs depend on each other for meaning. No sign has meaning by itself. Its value comes from its relation to other sign. Example, the word tree means something because it is different from bush or grass. Next, two planes of language. Saussure described language as having two interconnected planes. Signifier plane, the sound pattern, the way words are spoken or written. The second one is signified plane, which is the concept, the meaning associated with those words. So these two planes do not naturally match but are structured by a language system. Next is the chess analogy. Saussure compared language to a chess game. So a chess piece value depends on its position on the board, not on its physical form. Similarly, a word's meaning depends on its role within the language system, not on its connection to reality. Next is the value versus meaning. So signification, the link between signifier and signified. Example, mutton and sheep both signify the same animals. Next is the value, the position of a sign within a system. Example, mutton in French means both animal and meat. But in English, we use sheep for the animal and mutton for the meat. This shows that meaning is shaped by a language structure, not by direct reference to reality. Next is negative differentiations. A sign is defined not by what it is, but by how it differs from others. Example, we understand that color red by contrasting it with blue or green, not by looking at red objects alone. So next is the arbitrariness. Saussure emphasized that the connection between a signifier and a signified is arbitrary, meaning there is no natural link between them. For example, the word tree has nothing inherently tree-like about it. Different languages used different words for that same concept. While language is arbitrary, it also structured by convention. So once a word is established in a language, speakers cannot change it freely, as meaning depends on collective agreement. So Saussure also noted that language divide reality differently, as seen in the French, which means both sheep and mute, versus English, which separates the animal from the meal. Though arbitrariness allows flexibility, not all signs are completely random. Some, like onomatopoeic words, buzz, bang, have slightly motivation. So let's continue. Though they still vary between languages, Later theorists like Lacan argue that meaning is never fully fixed. As signifieds constantly shift beneath signifiers. So Saussure's concept of arbitrariness lead to the idea that language shapes reality rather than simply reflecting. So this challenged traditional beliefs that words are just labels for existing objects, influencing later studies in linguistics, semiotics, and cultural theory. The second one is we're going to discuss the Pearson model. So unlike Saussure, who viewed the sign as dyadic relationship between signifier and signified, Charles Sanders Peirce introduced a triadic model of sign. Again, Saussure viewed sign as dyadic, while Peirce introduces his model a triadic model of sign. So Peirce's model consists of three interrelated components. First is the representamen, second is the interpretant, third one is the object. So representamen, the physical or perceivable form of sign. It is equivalent to Saussure's signifier. It is the medium through which a sign conveys meaning. Example, a word, a symbol, a picture. Next is the interpretant. The sense or meaning that the sign produces in the mid of interpreter. This is not the referent itself, but rather how the meaning is understood. So the interpretant is what links the sign to the object. So the third element of the Peircean sign is the object. Object means the actual thing, the event or the concept that refers to, the actual thing or event or concept that sign refers to. For example, in this case of the word tree, if the representamen is written or spoken, word tree. If we say interpretant, it is the concept of a tree that forms in the mind of the interpreter. Next, the object is the actual tree in the real world. So that is the case of the word tree. If we represent tree, the representamen is the written or spoken word tree. The interpretant is the concept of tree that forms in the mind of the interpreter. And the object is the actual tree in the real world. Next, we're going to discuss it in infinite semiosis. It falls in the Peircean model. So Peirce introduced the idea that the interpretation of a sign does not stop at a single meaning. Instead, each interpretant leads to another interpretant in an ongoing chain of meaning. So this process is called unlimited semiosis. So example, the word tree evokes an image of a tree, which might then leads to thoughts about nature, environmental concerns, or even literary metaphors involving trees. So Peirce's models allows for context-dependent meaning, whereas Saussure's models emphasize the structure of a language. Next, Peirce's three models of sign. So Peirce classified into three fundamental types based on how they relate their object. First is the symbolic sign. The relationship between the signifier and the signified is arbitrary based on convention. So most human language is symbolic. The word dog has no natural connection to the animal it represents. Example, words spoken and written language, mathematical symbol, and traffic sign. Example, in the traffic sign, red means stop. Next is the iconic sign. The signifier resembles the object it refers to. The connection between sign and its meaning is not arbitrary but based on similarity. Example, photographs. They look like what they represent. Diagrams and maps. Onomatopoeic words like, example, buzz, meow. So that is. Next is indexical sign. The signifier has a direct physical or casual connection to the object. Indexical signs do not represent something, they indicate its presence or existence. Example, smoke, an index of fire, footprints, an index of someone having walked there, a thermometer reading, an index of temperature, personal pronouns, example, I, you, because their meaning depends on the context. So these three categories are not mutually exclusive. A single sign can function in multiple ways. For instance, a portrait is iconic. It resembles a person, but also indexical. It is made at a specific time and a place. Now, changing relations and types of a sign. So this discussion falls also in the Persian models. So signs do not have fixed meanings. Their relationship and function can change depending on usage and context. Digital versus analogical sign. Peers distinguish between two types of a sign, digital and the analogical. If we say digital signs have discrete, clear-cut differences units, example letters, numbers, words. Language is digital words. Language is digital. It is because words have fixed distinction between them. Example, cat versus pat. Next is analogical sign. Have continuous variation. Example, colors, temperature, facial expression, volume of speech. These signs do not have clear boundaries. So example, a clock can be either digital if it is displayed as numbers, or analog if it has moving hands that show time as a continuous flow. Now next, types versus token. A type refers to a general category. Example, the concept of a tree. A token is a specific instance of a type. This particular tree outside your window. So that is an example of token. Example, the word tree is a type, general concept. Each time someone writes or says tree, it is a token of the type. So the materiality of the sign. While Saussure treated sign as immaterial or pure psychological, later semioticians argued for the importance of the physical properties of a sign. Example, the font in which a word is written can affect meaning. Another example, the medium matters. Spoken words can carry tone, volume, and emotion that written words may lack. So this idea is crucial multimodal semiotics, where meaning is shaped by sounds, visual, gestures, and other material aspects of communication. So that is the Persian model. And let's continue to the third one. Okay, let's continue. The last one, Yamsleeve's framework. So Danish linguist Louis Yamsleeve, 1899 to 1965, built upon Ferdinand de Saussure's dyadic model of sign, but introduced a more systematic structure, which he outlined in his work Prolegomena to a Theory of Language, 1943. Saussure originally proposed that a sign consists of signifier, the material form of sign, words, sound, image, signified, the concept or meaning it conveys. So Yamsleeve expanded these models by proposing that a sign consists of two interrelated planes, each with its own form and substance. Again, Yamsleeve expanded this model by proposing that a sign consists of two interrelated planes, each with its own form and substance. The substance of expression, physical materials of the medium, example, photographs, recorded voice, printed words on paper. So in form of expression, language or formal syntax, structure, technique, and styles. So in substance of context, human content, textual word, subject matter or genre, form of content, semantic structure, Bagley and Hawk, thematic structure including narrative. So this explains that thus each sign has four layers. Substance of expression, which is the physical material, example sound wave, inks, pixels on the screen. Form of expression, the structural organization of the materials, example phonemes in speech and letters in writing. Next is substance of content, the broad conceptual field from which meaning is drawn. Example, cultural understandings of a concept. Next is form of content, the specific organization of meaning within a system. Example, grammatical structures or narrative conventions. In this example, plain, example in dog. If we take the English word dog, Yamsleeve's framework can be applied as follows. Substance of expression, the sound waves if spoken or ink on paper if written. Form of expression, the phonetic structure of the written letters dog. Next is the substance of content, the general concept of canine animals. Form of content, specific meaning of dog in English as opposed to chien in French. Shaped not only by linguistic structures, sorry. Again, this multi-layered approach allows semioticians to analyze how meaning is shaped not only by linguistic structure but also by cultural and material condition. So the relationship between expression and content, Yamsleeve emphasized that expression and content are naturally connected but are linked through structure. So this means that the same expression can carry different meanings depending on context. Example, the word bank can mean a financial institution or the side of a river. Next, the same content can be expressed in different forms. Example, the concept of a dog can be expressed in English dog, French chien, or a drawing of a dog. So this highlights the arbitrariness of linguistic sign, similar to Saussure's claim that there's no intrinsic connection between the word and the concept. Next is rematerializing the sign. So one of the significant contribution of Yamsleeve framework was shifting attention back to the material aspect of a sign, which Saussure largely ignored. Saussure treated sign as purely mental constructs, focusing on their structural relationship rather than their physical properties. However, Yamsleeve recognized that materiality matters in how meaning is constructed and interpreted. Next, why does materiality matter? So, first, different medium change meaning. So the phrase I love you spoken softly has different meaning than the same phrase yelled aggressively. So the same sentence in different fonts, example Gothic versus Comic Sans, carries different connotations. So cultural context affects interpretation. So the word red has different meanings in different contexts. Sometimes it's danger, passion, communism, good luck in Chinese culture. Thus, yam sleeve theory reintroduces the importance of materials expresses in semiotic analysis, influencing later multimodal semiotics, which looks of a sign across different media, text, image, sound, gestures, and digital communication. So the functional role of sign in text. Yam sleeve also emphasized that semiotic systems should be analyzed in terms of how they function within text rather than just as isolated elements. So he introduced the concept of connotative semiotics, which shows that signs don't have fixed meanings, but rather than gain meaning through denotation, the primary literal meaning of a sign, connotation, the secondary, culturally or emotionally loaded meaning. For example, in denotation of the word rose, a type of flower. Connotation of rose is love, romance, and beauty. So this approach influenced later structuralist and media studies, particularly in analyzing advocacy, film, and literature. So that's my report about the model of a sign. So we have three models. The Sassorian model, the Dyadic model of sign. The second one is the Persian model. Charles Sanders Peirce introduced Persian model of triadic model of sign. Sassor is dyadic relationship between signified and signified, while the Persian model is introduced a triadic model of sign. And then the last one is Yam sleeves framework. Thank you for listening. Thank you so much.